Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Collective. My name is Rich Brubaker, and I'm the founder of Collective Responsibility, and it's a pleasure having you back with us as we answer questions about sustainability, innovation, and leadership in Asia. Today on Ask the Collective, we're going to be talking about the obstacles that organizations and leaders face as they're driving sustainability through the organization and how to overcome them. So over the last few months, we've been fortunate to be engaged in a number of projects that we consider to be best in class. And often on these projects, there's an understanding, there's an intent to change the system. There's an understanding that sustainability is itself a process, and they have the resources to support such a mission. Regardless of how big the project scope has been, or even if it's just focused on a small area or really a big systemic thing, we've been fortunate that there's a real understanding behind this, that these are multi-year programs, that the KPIs, as it were, can't be so tactical, that we need a real strategic approach. But with even all of that, what we're finding is that a lot of these projects, they'll kind of hit obstacles either up front or really towards the end. And it could be a technical obstacle, procedural obstacle, or even a change of priorities within the stakeholders, because it's kind of Murphy's first law of sustainability in action. Like, once you have the intent, and once you have the resources, and once you know what you want to focus on, there's still that thing that's stopping you, and that could be technology, process, or the people involved. And as part of our recent Sustainability Ambassadors event in Shanghai, one of the things I really want to talk through was the obstacles that the leaders were facing. And we had CEOs, we had sustainability managers, we had nonprofit leaders, we had a real wide range of stakeholders as part of this. And they actually just kicked it right back to me. So I thought that I would, as someone who likes to take a challenge, I thought I would take this as my challenge, and this is the opportunity to talk through what we've seen, like what's behind the scenes sometimes, but also how to overcome some of these challenges. So to start off, I think it's important to recognize that change in any form is uncomfortable. And it's kind of like, I often like to use the marathon as an example of, if you're a slightly overweight or even a severely overweight individual, running a marathon tomorrow, regardless of the shoes you have, is it's not something that's very realistic. There needs to be a process. You need to kind of get off the couch. You need to stop watching TV. You need to take a walk around the block. You need to, go through the process of getting your body and your mind ready for that actual event day. And that's a process that takes time, and not respecting that process is something that I've really noticed up front can set up failure before you even get started. You think that you can get something done in a short amount of time, but you're unable to, so you stop. So regardless of who's leading the change, the resistance of internal stakeholders is something that we found to be probably the most frequent and potentially the most destructive. And that's because, oftentimes sustainability is kind of developed separate from the business. And if you're not considering the business's needs, then how could you, regardless of the intent or even the quality of the strategy, possibly think that you could change the business as just kind of a tack on? And that could be just a salesperson who doesn't understand, the value of sustainability or the value of the brand sustainability as it comes to their day-to-day tactical sales. They don't necessarily know how it makes their product more attractive. It definitely doesn't become a talking point with their customers. So anything the comms team does to develop the sustainable mission or the sustainable materials, it can fall off very quickly because the people who are the comms team is trying to deliver this material to aren't engaged as part of the process. Second, there are technical and process challenges that we've seen quite often in our recent work. And a great example of that would be in the recycling programs that we've been hearing so much about. We've been fortunate to have several clients in this space, and they want to recycle various things. But when we get into the actual work, we start to see where these products are actually recycled. It changes quite quickly. So at the global emotional level, yes, we want to ban plastic. We want to ban packaging. We want to close the loop on our materials, be it textiles, rubber, whatever it may be, electronic components. But actually executing on that requires not just a respect, but a deep piece of research on how that will impact the process itself of delivering to the consumers. To do a textile take-back program, like any of your clothes, your shoes, hats, hardware like this, whatever it may be, you're going to put this box into your retail store, and we'll just call it H&M, or it could be Nike, it could be any of the other retail brands. They've all been talking about this. And I want you to think about that process. Just introducing that box would kind of create the change of process that box would require within the retail store itself. First off, you have to get the site manager, the manager of the store. You might need to get security. You'll probably need to get brand retail teams involved to make sure that not only is the box in the right position, that it's safe, that it's secure, but that it doesn't really impact the consumer's experience. Accounting and legal, they need to get involved with this because they need to figure out not only how to account for the goods that are coming in, because they need to, but if you're going to grant a voucher as part of this program, you're going to give a $5 back, a $20 back, a buy one, get one back. They need to work out that mechanism whereby the shirt, the shoe, the pair of sunglasses is evaluated on site by the staff, by the frontline staff, and then the voucher is given out to kind of maintain that encouragement of this entire engagement all the way through the consumers. And that's just inside the store. Sidestepping the debate of whether or not competitive products should even be involved or not, or what happens if you get too much, do you put it in the back or not? Just that alone, you have to engage accounting, legal, brand, retail experience, maybe logistics. And that's when supply chain and perhaps quality control get involved. They need to work out what to do with the materials. So are you going to donate it to an NGO right away? Well, we got to think about brand on that one. Are you going to send it back to your DC, your distribution center? If so, you need to have internal processes that allow to make sure that you have space set aside for this stuff, that the quality control is allowed to do their work, that there will be no leakage inside or outside that entire process. And again, you probably need to get your public affairs and PR teams involved, as well as legal and accounting again. If the goods are going to be recycled, then you have to start a whole nother process of identifying the partners. What's the process for that? Will they pick it up at your warehouse? Will they pick it up at the stores? How do you maintain your brand protection to the entire part? This is a massive challenge. And depending upon the brand, after the announcement, will determine about the process, which materials go through which process, and whether or not products will actually be delivered back into the system, which is what a lot of textile firms are trying to do now. They're trying to take this cotton or this polyester, they're trying to drive it back through the recycling process to become new thread for their new products. Now you need to get the entire organization has to be involved in this to close the loops. And you're not going to get that done if you're just doing it by yourself as a sustainability manager, or as in our case, an agency working with a single leader or with a single business unit. It needs to take everyone on board. Finally, there's the technical side of these challenges that at times simply isn't ready. And this, going back to the textile example, is a great example. It just came out of the H&M scandal, where H&M was taking the recycled items from their stores in China, and I don't know how many, but their stores in China. They were boxing them up, they were putting them into containers, and they were sending them to Europe for processing. Now, separate related was that within Europe, they were actually sending them to incinerators in Northern Europe. So actually, within the European context, they couldn't even manage it there, but they still felt the need to box it up here, ship it out, and send it to an incinerator, potentially send it to an incinerator in Europe. Now, this made great media fodder in the part because H&M had been making a lot of announcements, a lot of poor announcements about how strong they were, about how positive they were, about how they were closing the loops, and it just wasn't really the case. But the reality is that we should have a deeper respect for how challenging it would be for a firm like H&M, which has thousands of stores and millions, if not tens of millions, if not billions of pieces of clothing that are being created every year as well as wasted every year. You can't go from a firm that is doing nothing to a firm which is completely closing the loop in a 2 to 3 year process. And that's really what technically H&M showed, because as we were looking at this exact same structure, while in the Shanghai area there were about 50 recyclers that could take textiles, the reality is that depending upon the material of the textile, be it 100% cotton, 100% polyester, a mix of different materials, you had very different processes and very different partners that you could work with. For a lot of the firms that we've been working with, you go out to these recyclers, they won't pass your audits. So what are you going to do? You put the announcement out there in advance, but then and you had the process in place for taking this all back, but technically you couldn't get done what you wanted to. And that's what I'm saying. You really need to be able to, when overcoming these obstacles, respect that there are 3 levels. In overcoming these obstacles, there's a few things that we've learned over time. First, before making any announcements about what your intentions are, your goals are, your KPIs are, and how you're actually externalizing this program, firms need to understand the people, product, and the process that's involved at length. It's not just time, it's not just money, it's really making sure that you invest in asking the right questions to the right people and maintaining engagements and being open to the idea that what you want to get done might be a bigger challenge than you thought it would be. As part of this process, really, it's just about gaining the realistic expectations of what the outcome should be, making sure there's manageable doses when it comes to relationships, but making sure that that marathon is broken up into very manageable steps so that no one pulls a muscle through this entire process. Because as we know, if you try to go too fast in the gym and you pull a muscle, the reality is that you may not go back. Developing a sustainability program is really no different in that regard. And this is where the second piece comes in. A really strong, well-developed, well-structured pilot that can be quite small, but where the lessons of how to engage, what process is required, and how to scale it up are the real focus. Failure is okay for everyone involved, and failure is an opportunity to learn from everyone involved, instead of pulling a muscle. This is just the pain of going into the gym and just getting your body, getting your mind into the right spot so that you can actually get to the marathon level. And so being a coffee brand, trying 32 different ways to get rid of your coffee cup, or trying to incentivize your customers to be part of the challenge, or to do a mix of those. Do those in 32 different stores at a global level. Any failure is an opportunity for learning, but imagine if you roll out the biodegradable coffee cup across all your stores in a certain region, and that cup didn't perform in a certain way. It'd be a failure. Imagine trying to overcome that later. So making sure you're starting off with really manageable expectations, they have a strong pilot behind it, so you can really learn from those. The third thing that I've really seen a lot of, and the brands have done this well, and I will probably reference Interface Flooring and Patagonia here more than anyone else at this point, because they're brands that would be identifiable, was that the leaders don't really talk about anything unless there's something to talk about. And at that point, when they start talking, it's not really for the awards, it's not to show off. What I often see is that brands who spend the time, go through the pilot, scale the success, are often not happy with that as the end all and be all. What they want to do is then change the industry. So when they're talking, they're actually usually talking to their peers and usually referencing business cases. They're often very open about the challenges that are still faced. And this is where a strong leader can come in, because they know that in reality, a lot of these leaders, or a lot of these brands, when their PR team puts something out, they're out over their skis from day one. That in reality, a lot of these challenges are not something that has worked out, and that, be it for people, product, or process, there's a lot of work to be done, so it's really best to stay heads down. Finally, the best way that I've seen leaders overcome is just to maintain a constant pressure. This isn't a sprint, it is a marathon. And if you fix your plastic straw today, you have your plastic cap tomorrow. If you fix your plastic cap tomorrow, you have your tray liner the day after that. There is no end goal. It really is a constant process. But that process, just like a marathon, if you start trying to go full sprint, you're gonna die very quickly. You have to start by getting off the couch. You have to start by going for a walk around the block. Take a jog in place, and over a realistic time, go from your current state to your ideal state, recognizing fully that your ideal state is something that will change over time. So with that, I'd like to thank you for taking time to engage with us, and we really hope that this episode provides some valuable insights into the challenge of overcoming obstacles, but also provided a few ways that you may be able to frame how you're going to overcome, get around, or engage through yours.